Hello, everyone. My name is Wendy Barden, and I'm the Music Education Specialist at Perpich Center for Arts Education. I'm very excited that you have indicated an interest in being a part of the MultiDistrict Music PLCs for the coming school year. Today, I want to share a short video with you that has some important information about getting started. Outcomes of this video and the email in which it came. First of all, I want you to take away a collective understanding of the PLC framework that we'll use. I want you to be able to take a brief look at the work of last year's PLCs, and then be ready to confirm the music concept or skill that you'd like to focus on this year in the PLC, and what grade level specifically that you'd like to work with. And then also, I would like to get an idea of when you are available to meet. Here are two important upcoming dates. First of all, the date for confirming your participation and the information that I just went over in the outcomes is Tuesday, August 31st. And there's a Google form attached in your email to use. And that's because PLC meetings will begin as early as that week of September 13th. So there won't be much turnaround time. Those are really important dates if we want to get everything started. So our work this year will be really all about measuring student growth over time. We're going to use a year-long cycle. So that means that the task that your students will be working on will be perhaps a little more complex. In September, when we meet, we will create a common assessment in our PLC. And then you will each use that common assessment as a pre-assessment in October. And then it will come back as the post-assessment in March. Your PLC will focus on 4 questions that are very standard for a professional learning community. What do we want students to know or be able to do? Number 1, right? And that will be based around the skill or the concept that your group chooses to focus on. Question number 2, how will we know if they've learned it? That's really the purpose of that common assessment that we develop. So a really important work that we have to do right away. Then those other 2 questions, numbers 3 and 4, how will I respond if they haven't learned it yet? Or how will I respond if they already know it? And that it, of course, meaning the concept or skill that we're focusing on. And those 2 questions will be really the focus of our discussion in November, January, and February. So we'll be able to share lots of resources and best practices to help all students do better. The multi-district PLCs allow us to work at the highest end of the continuum and focus on music learning in a specific class or a specific grade level. This is something that's not possible when a PLC has mixed departments or mixed grade levels in it. Even when there's a K-12 music department, PLC for example, and even when we agree that we want to focus on rhythm looks different, and we approach it differently whether we're working with elementary children or in an ensemble, middle level or high school. And even choral and instrumental approach things differently. So we want to really be focused in on some job-alike, class-alike learning so that we can do collective inquiry and action research to increase the achievement of every student in our classes. Our job-alike PLCs will focus on learning in your alike classes, and so that will be really learning that matters. This will be work, right? It won't, hopefully not too much, but that idea that it will take some effort and energy and thinking and a great opportunity. So learning that matters for your students. We're going to have to be willing to trust each other, to collect data and to share it and respond to data as we agree to our timeline and to our norms and the protocols that we set up. Together, we're going to problem solve and help each of our students achieve more. It's not like working as the only elementary music teacher in your building or in your district, or the only choir director in your district, and really kind of at your own devices. We're going to be able to really help each other with this. Here's the basic data cycle that we're going to be using. First, we'll be identifying a concept or skill, and actually that's what you'll be doing between now and the end of August, and that's how I will put you into PLCs, is by your areas of interest. Then when we meet right away in September, our job will be to create a common assessment that we can use for both the pre-assessment and the post-assessment. That'll be really important, so we have our work cut out for us there. In October, you each will take the pre-assessment and administer it in your classes. Your students will complete that. You will put the scores into a shared document, shared Excel spreadsheet. I'll do a little bit of organization there with the scores and maybe some analysis. And then when we meet together in November, each of you will be able to set a learning goal based on the data that your students showed you in that pre-assessment. Between November and March, so November, December, January, February, each of us will work really intently on teaching towards that learning goal. You'll be able to track your students, refine your instruction. We will be sharing strategies and best practices, some resources that will really work together to help each other, help our students do better, right? Improve, go faster than, do more than we could do by ourselves. In March, you will use that same common assessment as a post-assessment. You'll write the scores into that shared spreadsheet. I'll do a little bit more organizing, and we will take a look at the data in April and really celebrate the learning of your students for the year. So with that process and kind of framework in mind, I thought it would be interesting for you to see some of the work that was done in the PLCs last school year. It was a pilot project. There were 11 school districts involved. You can see them there. And I thought it was really commendable, being that they worked together to develop common assessments really for the unknown. When we started out a year ago, we didn't know if students would be meeting in person or distance learning or what combination. And so it was really kind of a leap of faith. I think that people really jumped in to the PLCs. You'll notice, I think, because of that we really stayed more toward foundational knowledge and skills, just some real basic things that we wanted to be sure that our students took away from the school year, even or no matter what the year brought. So there was a group of elementary general music teachers, and they taught and used this, collected their data in either grade 1 or 2, depending on when this fit best in their curriculum. And they wanted to know if their students could compare the sound of a rhythm pattern to symbols on a screen, and could they match them up? Could they say that what they saw on the screen was either the same or different from what they heard? There were 10 patterns. You can see the little answer sheet there. And here's an example of some of the data that was collected. It's one teacher's data, and based on her pre-assessment, her goal was for each second grader to raise their pre-assessment score by 3. So there were 10 possible. You can see for each child, there's 2 bars, and the bar on the left was their fall score, and the bar on the right was their final score in the spring. Lots of those first scores were at a 4 or below, some were at 5, a couple at yellow, which would be 6 or 7, and you can see where they ended up. Oh my goodness. Here's another way we looked at the data. There were 10 items correct, and in the fall, which now is orange, you can see that there's the bigger bump down towards 3. That was the most frequent score. That in the fall there were 8 children that scored a 3 out of 10. And then you can see the line in the green, which is the spring. And here how the slope is totally different, and the high point is very high, up at 16. And up at 10, sorry. And that had 16 children that scored all 10 correct there. I think the other ideas down at the right side, the average score in the fall was 5, and the average score in the spring was 9. The midpoint, so middlemost point in the scores, it was 5 in the fall and 10 in the spring. And the most frequent score in the fall was 3, and the most frequent score in the spring was 10. So really good way to look at data, just like any other subject, and really see perhaps in black and white or numerical terms that the achievement that students were gaining. We also did an item analysis. We created that assessment, and so we were kind of looking at how we did. And you can see that there's some differences there, and there's some questions that we were asking. Particularly the one that kind of stands out for me is number 9. Why did more children get that one correct in the fall than in the spring? I'm not really sure yet, but anyway, we were really trying to do diligence and take a look at what we were doing as well. So that was the PLC that worked with first and second graders. Then there was a PLC of band teachers that taught 6th, 7th, and 8th. And depending on the school, we were focusing on 16th notes. And so some used their 6th graders and some used their 7th graders. And the idea would be that here's a page that has really its 4 measures put in different orders. And they practiced this, gave a minimal guided practice with their students, and they wanted their students to be independent in playing 16th notes, and most basically that idea that there's a difference between 16th notes and 8th notes. You can see their scoring rubric down at the bottom. It was just a 3-2-1. It was accurate, an occasional or a minor glitch in the row, or there were frequent errors. So the student was randomly assigned one row to play on a single pitch. So based on the pre-assessment data, one of the teachers set 2 goals. Her first goal was that all of the students that scored in the pink level, so they made lots of mistakes, would move to the yellow level, meaning that they would make maybe an occasional error. And you can see here that, yes, one student did that, moved from pink to yellow, yay, but all of the other 4 students moved to green. And so they were able to play it with no errors in the spring, which was really exciting for her. They improved by 2 levels. Her second goal is that she had some students that scored in the yellow on the pre-assessment, and she wanted them to move from yellow to green. So from making an occasional error to being able to play it error-free. And you can see that that also happened for 5 out of the 6 students that had scored a yellow on their pre-assessment. Here's a chart that shows all of the woodwinds in that teacher's class. And if you do the math, 87% of the students can play pairs of 8th notes and 4/16ths accurately. So by the end, these are the students that scored at that level of 3. I thought it was pretty interesting that there were a number of students that scored a 3 that could play these lines without errors at the beginning, and they were able to maintain that even though the year got really mixed up in the middle in the winter time relative to did we have band, did we not have band, could we play our instruments, and all of those kinds of things. And that really just pointed out that idea that there were a lot of students that were ready to move on and maybe work on that next layer of complexity would be that the combinations of the 8th and 16ths. This was the common assessment that was created by the high school band PLC. You can see there were 5 lines, each one in a different meter, and they were looking again at subdivisions of the beat. You can see that their scale at the bottom is a little bit different. No errors was 4, blue, and 1 and 2 errors, 3 or 4 errors, all the way down to pink, which was lots of errors, pulse unsteady. Here are some of the results. We looked at each line separately, thinking that maybe meter would have something to do with it. And for this teacher, each student would improve by one level on each line. So if there was a student that was making many errors, the idea would be hopefully that they would make fewer errors, right, and move up to the yellow group, or that they would move from yellow to green and make, instead of 3 or 4 errors, that they would make 1 or 2 errors. And so you can see the results on the right there. There were 22 students that played both pre and post assessments, and there were 50% of the students moved up one level, from yellow to green or from green to blue. There were 4 students, or 18%, moved up 2 levels, and actually there was 1 student that moved up 3 levels from pink to blue. Pretty amazing there, pretty fun to see, actually. There were 6 students who stayed at the same level. So what was that about? I mean, we could go digging in more into that, I think. We also looked, in addition to looking at like the overall group, we looked at individual students, and here are a list of the individual students who improved more than 1 level, so greater than, overshot her goal by 2 or more lines. And you can see some of the students there, they were really had some great success and improved like 3 lines. Or even 2 lines, 2 levels. That's pretty cool. So as we were looking at the data, this is like 6/8 line, and we looked at all of the students at this one school, and we looked at the scores in the fall and looked at the scores in the spring. Those are those left 2 bar graphs. Then we teased out only the 9th graders, which you can see are the next 2 graphs. In the fall and then in the spring. The 10th and 11th graders are combined because of the number of students at that grade level. Again, you can see in the fall there's lots of pink there. 11 students scored many, many errors. And in the spring, look at that. There were 9 students that had no errors. And then in 12th grade, the fall to spring. And each pair of bar graphs, you can see a real leaning towards blue, which was exactly where we were hoping students would go. We also were able to compare across one grade level and looked at their achievement on each of the 5 different meters. So here you can see, again, in pairs, fall to spring. You can see 4-4 meter, you can see 3-4 meter, 5-4 as we're moving across, 6-8, and then cut time. And in the spring is where you see the blue, which is exactly what we wanted. And there's no pink in the spring, which is pretty exciting. The work that the high school choir PLC undertook was maybe a little messier, I'll say. Their question or their prompt was, what can you learn, or what is everything that you can learn from the music, looking at an octavo? And they developed a survey of 24 questions, and it was this survey that was then applied to any number of pieces, of which you can see some of them here. What's the tempo that you start out at? What's the name of the piece? Who wrote the piece? Where did the music come from? Is there an introduction? At what dynamic level do you start? Is that the same as you end in? What's the first note that you sing, and is it the same as another part? Where's a good place to take a breath? Lots of questions like that is what they were asking their students to look for. And here's the results from one teacher based on those 24 questions. We gave the whole survey again a couple times, but really focused in on the items that were most important at that time. Remember, we were still in that pandemic, and were we in class, were we not in class, what could we do, those kinds of things. So out of that initial data, the pre-assessment data, this teacher had 2 goals. The first one was that 70% of the students would be able to respond to questions about tempo and dynamics accurately, and then 80% of the students would be able to identify a good place to take a breath in that music. And you can see where the students ended up. They met both of those goals, even though they started the year significantly lower. We also drilled down and looked at the responses, compared the responses from one assessment to the next, so we could see if that improved, if there was improvement, if there wasn't, and really look at, again, individual work, because that's where we're going to change achievement, right? Individual student achievement. And yes, it's good to look at the whole, but we still need to look at individual student work as well. So that was the way we did it with this particular assessment. Here's just one last look at those bars. Again, the green is from spring, blue is in the middle, and red was from the fall. And you can just see that progression. The high point moves from, I guess really it moves from left to right, which was, again, really exciting for the teachers to see. So in the 2021 pilot year of PLCs, they tended to focus on some of those foundational or fundamental skills. The elementary PLC had asked the question, does the sound of a rhythm pattern you hear match the notation that you see? That was their investigation. The band-to-band PLCs, the middle level, 6th and 7th grade one, looked at rhythm from a 16th note and pairs of 8th notes perspective. And then the high school group looked at subdivisions of the beat in playing rhythm lines in various meters. Then the high school choir PLC looked at those music terms and symbols. When you read an octavo, what can you learn from reading an octavo? That's where their work centered last year. So how about moving forward? What are your next steps? Well, first of all, I'd like you to go to that Google form link, and it will ask you some logistics questions. What's the best day of the week, or what are good days to meet, or what are days that you're not available? I know I asked that last spring, but things may have changed, and so let's just confirm that. Confirm the preferred group that you'd like to be with. Some of you teach in multiple levels, and let's make sure that you get in the group that you really want to be a part of. Confirm those grade levels that you want to focus on. And then fourthly, and very importantly, is to indicate what your area of interest is. What skill or what specific knowledge do you want to focus on this year with this PLC? When you take a look at the Google form, you'll see many ideas, and these, it's just a list. It's a brainstormed list. Can your students match the sound of a rhythmic pattern to notation? Can they write in the counting? Can they perform a rhythm line? Can they do some sight reading? Maybe that's where you want to focus on. Do you want to think about solfege? Maybe you want to think about everything you can learn from the music, like the choral PLC did last year, that reading and interpreting specific marks. Maybe you want to have students interpret and perform rather than talk about. Maybe you want to see if they can perform their music accurately and then explain what was challenging and what did they do to fix it. How did they improve? Maybe you'd like to focus on that respond category or that respond strand of our standards and think about students describing elements in the music, or describing how elements in the music contribute to the meaning of the music. Or maybe you want to do some work with ear training or oral skills. Any of those things. What would be most important for you? There's also an other blank there to think of something else. We're going to be able to disaggregate the data as well. So thinking about what are you curious to know if there are differences in your students. And this actually we don't have to think about until December, and this can be specific. Everybody in your group doesn't have to agree to this, but there are some really interesting things that you might want to think about, and we'll come back to that more in September. So here's that first important date, that if you could complete that Google form by Tuesday, August 31st, sooner if possible, would be much appreciated. And I know that'll be tough because some of you may be already in school for more than a week, and others will still be in pre-service teacher workshops. But the idea is that can we get up and going, because the first PLC meetings will begin right away in September, as early as that week of September 13th. So I'll need to take the information that you send to me and use that to form your groups and get you scheduled so that we're on your calendars too, and that we can go ahead and get started on meeting in September and that common assessment, which is like a really critical piece of the work. So timing and time, if you could help by really doing your best to meet those deadlines, that would be fabulous. If you have any questions, please don't hesitate to send an email. I'd love to think aloud about that with you or try and answer it as best I can. The multi-district music PLCs are really exciting. I'm very much looking forward to working with you over the course of the year. And if by chance you have a friend that maybe didn't respond to the email initially in the spring, but that you would like to encourage them to be a part of this as well, please share the form or the email and see if you can't get them enrolled as well. We'd love to have them. There's still time to be involved, and this whole idea is to be working forward towards student achievement. And if that means that we can bring in more colleagues to do that, all the better. So thanks much. Have a great last few weeks of summer vacation, perhaps, and then a great start to the new school year. We'll see you soon. Bye-bye.